Welcome to Isn't It Obvious, where things are obvious. That's going to be the intro.
That's going to be the intro forever now.
Right.
And of course, Command and Conquer is clearly just military propaganda, put together to show that the only right is might. But Tim Curry was
propaganda. Awesome. Everything's a cult. Just
what?
I like StarCraft.
Just get used to that.
This is kind of funny, but we have enough episodes in backlog to last a year. So for the listeners that are still with us,
thanks, Mom.
Hi, Mom. We would have about a year's content with no feedback, no critical analysis from our fans. Hi, Mom. Nothing. We're just discussing this straight up without any sort of course correction at all.
Let's
for our
be
dear
realistic
listeners.
Here. A lot of this is never going to see the light of day. After we listen to it, we're going to have to we're all going to have to re-listen to it and be like, nope, that's not going out. Nope.
But also, a lot of
other
this,
people know.
Even with
how
feedback,
stupid I
will
was.
never change. I will still trample over both of you with my erroneous points that do nothing but railroad what we're talking about. That will never change.
I mean, the classics are still here, right?
Are they classics if nobody's heard them?
Micah comes out
is
with
that
a steamroller.
Isn't it obvious that it's still classic if no one's heard that?
It's not a steamroller, it's just the old-fashioned lawnmower. I'm not totally cutting you down on your point. I'm just trimming it down a bit.
I am like the stone, the hidden stone in the grass. He's just going to come on and fuck up your blades, Micah. Anyway.
Okay. All right, well, if you haven't already figured it out by now, I am the co-host, Philip, and with me is Sera and Micah, and today's topic is, isn't it obvious? It's not survival of the fittest, it's survival of the most adaptable.
Yeah.
Not survival of the fittest, it's survival of the most adaptable.
How is most adaptable not fit?
No, it's the cleverest.
Again, how is that not fit?
It's the sneakiest. Well, because if you say something like, oh, it's a survival of the fittest, and again, I'm not a biologist by any means, but I always thought, like, it's the person that's super strong. Oh, that's the person that's supposed to not just lead, but survive.
Then they would use the word the strongest, not fittest. Fit is just better suited.
Fit is competence. And it's survival.
Oh, no. We don't use fit that way. Like, do you use fit that way? If I said, hey, look, I'm trying to get back into shape, I want to be more fit. You're not going to be like, oh, that person's clever like a snake. Yes,
no,
like that's the person I want. No,
if I'm saying I'm going to go to the gym to be more fit, I'm being more physically competent.
God damn it, Micah, no one talks like this.
But if you're saying that someone fit-minded, that's a phrase, right?
No, but like, you know, if you're trying to if you're hiring someone, you're trying to find someone who's best fit for that position.
I would agree if you say best fit, but I wouldn't say, oh, well, I want the best fittest.
Well, then you would say
Most
the fittest.
Right? Like, it just doesn't make sense. Fittest to me has the...
Fittest is a stupid word.
It is a very...
It's not a word. That's because you're just corrupted by American capitalism that derives fitness as a means of physical
There
strength.
he goes again. Everyone take a shot.
I already took 5 shots before, so...
The best part is this will be our first episode, and we're just going to fuck with new listeners. We have a year in backlog, episode 001.
I mean... To be honest, I don't think anyone would want to listen to a year's worth of backlog, but if they do...
You never know.
They exist.
Patron-only content will just have it like negatives. There'll still be an episode 0, but there'll be like episode -1 and -2, like going in the backlog, because want to hear our garbage.
But also because we go through the backlog and rank them, how bad they are. So, like, -1 is almost an episode, but -2 is definitely worse than -1 content-wise.
Clearly the patron...
BC. And AD.
She might be the imposter, though.
It's going to get dated.
Sorry, that was...
That's fine. It's a 2-year-old game
AD.
that just won Best Multiplayer Game this year, so...
For our listeners, we're talking about Minecraft. No, I
it was
think...
it was something your parents played before full VR took over.
Listen,
no.
my parents never played. Anyway.
Because they were stuck on
first of all...
What? What even is that?
You don't know
Commodore
what
64.
No.
Sera.
What?
Sera.
Listen.
I know it's no Stardew Valley, but ColecoVision is great.
Wait, seriously though, what games would our parents' generation play?
My dad played Zelda.
Jax.
The first one.
But when he was a kid, not when he was like a fully fledged member of society being productive and stuff. When he was like teenager, what would he play?
Oh, like video games? Not video games. I don't know. He was... Honestly, I don't know if he really played many games. He was sort of... Yeah. I don't know how much fun he had as a kid.
Were you saying there
That
was
sounds
no
like a
arcade
recipe.
to save his life, a la Stranger Things?
No. I don't think he went to the Ark. Well, I don't know. I'd have to ask him. I know he, was forced to go on family camping trips that he hated.
Yeah, that just sounds like when America was great.
Yeah. Like, it builds character and Lyme disease.
Nothing like shitting in the woods with no toilet paper.
So...
Shh! Stop it! Zip up the tent, alright? They're listening.
Yeah. I think my dad was more like... And this is probably says a lot about why he is the way he is now, but I think he just did a lot of chores. He would just help his dad work on things.
Like, that was his entertainment?
I don't know if that was entertainment, but it was an activity he did.
I mean, that's a hell of a back in my day, though.
That...
You kids these days don't know what it was.
Back in my day,
work was my entertainment. I worked before I went to work.
I'm sure he had fun things he did, games and stuff played, but I don't know.
Actually, the last game your dad played was just a Ouija board, and he didn't say goodbye.
Aww.
So he left the spirits open.
Exactly.
Now he's haunted forever. Until he finds that exact game board and moves the thing.
It has to be that same planchette.
Yep.
Okay, do you think he played a lot more, board games then? Like chess or something?
He
I mean, I can't think
chess, but I don't know if... I'd have to ask him, honestly.
Or card games, like poker, right? Like, I just can't think of a day of my life growing up that I didn't have a video game.
That's because we were spoiled, privileged Americans after the rampant consumerism of the 80s, where everybody had to have a thing.
I went outside a lot, you guys. I don't know I have no idea what your life was like, but I was told to go play outside.
That is incredibly reckless and dangerous. Like,
we had woods in our backyard. I got real friendly with the spiders and the squirrels. It was great. I made little tree forts.
All right. So when they said, "Hey, Sarah, just go outside. It's a nice day out," and then were you supervised at all? Let's say that you're
what? No.
Let's say that you're like 6 or 8. Just like, "Hey, it's a nice day. Stop looking at the TV. Just go outside." Would they actually tell you, "But don't go beyond this boundary," or make sure you're within eyesight or ear? You just off you go.
Well, if we were up north at the lake house where there was all sorts of aunties and uncles around, the only rule was don't go down by the lake without an adult. That was the only rule. Otherwise, you're free to roam. You've got 3 properties to just wander around in. You could do whatever. And people were kind of looking out for you, but they weren't actively watching you.
Oh, that's crazy.
It was great. It was the best. But there were so many people. There wasn't any, places to hide. You didn't, oh, that's not true. You could, probably crawl under the deck or whatever, but...
Could you encounter, randos at all?
Probably not. I mean, most people kind of stayed to their own houses around there. There wasn't that many people up there at the time.
Okay. That blows my mind because I would never...
Well, not in the cities. In the cities...
Yeah, country living's different. Oh, it's cat.
Yeah.
Oh, I only lived in the suburbs, so I can't imagine just saying to my kiddos, oh, just go ahead, goodbye, right? Just, you're 8 years old now.
Yeah,
here's a Pokemon.
At 8. Maybe
avoid the tall grass.
Maybe at 13, 14, with a friend, you could go biking to the city library or something.
But also, suburbs in the 90s is different than suburbs now.
Not much, but a
lot more
little.
paranoia
perception?
now.
Yeah.
Because of what happened to kids in the 90s.
That's true.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Although, I don't know, my mother was her anxiety was contagious. I don't know. She was afraid of everything. She thought I was gonna get kidnapped, if I just walked outside alone after dark or something. And I'm just probably not. So.
Oh, I feel good. I built up that paranoia myself from just watching HBO as a kid.
Yeah, just watch all those crime shows and you're just well, I'm glad the world's such a shitty, terrible place. And, I mean, it kind of is, but it's not as bad as they make it sound.
But it's also worse. It's worse. Because some of those things actually happen. It just hasn't happened to you.
And you just don't know about it.
Exactly.
Well, and you just don't know about it because people got away with it. It just happens. No one says anything or does anything about it.
Yeah.
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 It's I can't wait for the next great prolific serial killer to be caught and all of his crimes to be yeah, I've killed 130 people. You guys just never caught me.
I mean, now you just have to let the virus run its course and people won't even blink an eye at that number.
Well, yeah, but
it's
so impersonal that way.
okay, I had this discussion with my parental figure, and I said, like, why is it that, this is about 10 years ago, why is it that if it's a terrorist strike, people will lose their minds? And then we would have a whole new organization dedicated to prevent people from having a smooth flight, being patted down at a TSA checkpoint. I understand, like, the fatalities are very tragic, but it seems like this reaction is only reserved for when we're being targeted. But heart disease or death by eating too much cheese
we did
wheels,
that to ourselves.
or smoking, or
it meets our
drunk
expectations.
driving.
That's why when this virus started, there will be deaths. People will transmit it, but you need to take these steps to stop it. And a bunch of people said no, and then they died. And other people were like, well, that's what happens. And then more people were like, no, I'm not going to do that. Then more people died. It's the expectation. Unlike a terrorist attack that is unforeseen, except for the FBI.
Well, so is a pandemic. I think it's more like a tribal warfare thing. We have an actual enemy who is invading our territory, and we have to reciprocate that ingrained tribal.
But how does that not transfer to a virus? It is the same type of. It's a more literal invasion.
Yeah, but it's not a conscious one. It's not violently attacking us personally. It's not a personal attack. Like you said, this is what happens. We can do stuff to prevent it. We can do stuff to eliminate it as if it were an enemy, and we should probably be treating it more like an enemy, but we don't see viruses or bacteria as a war. Maybe that's just our American culture or something, but like we don't really do anything unless it's a war on something.
What about domestic terrorism?
That's another one that I found to be very odd too, is that the label matters. So if you have a group of people carrying M16s and protesting, I don't even like bat an eye. This is just, oh, these people are cosplaying as militiamen, and they're just saying, like, look at us, like, look at my super expensive gear, and isn't my costume super cool? Yeah, that Naruto costume is really nice. Well done on the stitches. And also the guy dressed up as like a paratrooper. Fantastic.
How do you shoot your gun?
Okay, now you can go home with your toys now. But it doesn't bother me. But if someone was carrying an ISIS flag in our great state and did the same thing, but this time they're actually like dressed in the same type of outfit, I would be freaked out a bit. Oh, wait a minute, this is actually a problem.
So if a bunch of trucks with Trump MAGA 2020 flags hanging out of them, with all of their AR-15s and an AK-47 that isn't automatic, so he can technically own it, drive up in a giant caravan, that's not frightening. But if they just had a black flag and some balaclavas on,
I would say both of those are equally frightening to me. I would be nowhere near them.
The first one, I would say, like the MAGA folk, I would liken them to people who are really into just dressing up for play, just like any kind of convention. I would feel like, well, what are you guys really going to do? This is just my thinking of it. Like, obviously they can do damage, but most of the time they're just kind of all...
They're posturing
and like, hey, I'm going to intimidate you. And I'm like, okay, well, nice $50,000 pickup trucks and, you know, tens of $1,000s of weapons, but you're not really going to do anything, are you? Right? Like, in my head, it's like you're just going to go try to exert your dominance somehow and then go back home, and that's it. But if I see a black flag with Arabic on it and that says Islamic State of Syria, I would be like, okay, this is not good. This is clearly a threat that needs to be handled right now, even if they're just cosplayers too. But the second one has a different label associated with it. There is an agency here. There are people that are capable of planning moves, probably 5 or 10 steps ahead of me, that are here right now causing not just mischief, but terror. That would be shut down quick.
What is the difference between intimidation and terror?
Not much in the court of law.
Not much. But the first case is me and a bunch of other people like me, I guess, will look at it like, oh, you know, having fun today, huh? And the second one is like, holy shit, we got to call somebody about this. Even if it's the same premise, people dressing up.
There's something to be said about, again, the tribal symbolism, the outgroup or the enemy or, you know, the outsider. We recognize certain symbols, like if it, you know, like an ISIS flag or a Nazi flag, we recognize that as visually the enemy. That is the enemy. They are outsiders. We do not trust them. Mm-hmm. When we see MAGA hats and Trump 2020 flags and stuff like that, we see them as crazy Uncle Bill. And I don't know that this is true for everyone, but the sense I'm getting from how you're describing it, Phil, is that you recognize that they're family, even if they're family you don't like, they're not necessarily going to kill you, even though
They could.
They could. And even though 9 times out of 10, the people who murder you are generally people you know.
Mm-hmm.
So just saying, it's family versus the known stranger, the known enemy.
What about those family members, as you put it, that wave swastikas, have swastika tattoos, have Confederate flags next to their MAGA flag, have Nazi swastika flags next to their MAGA flags?
Traitors.
Yeah,
Fucking traitors, defectors.
I would feel
Or
like,
insane.
why are you rooting for a team that lost and then
Also,
migrating
why
to
are you
another
rooting
team that
for-
lost? But
Yeah.
I look at them with kind of pity because they're associating their brand with something that's just very unfashionable, in my opinion. I hope. The idea of saying like, well, the Confederate battle flag is part of our history and we're respecting its heritage. Like, okay, but what about that huge Nazi flag that's next to it?
Sometimes we don't talk about the shitty things great Auntie Mabel did back in the day. We just move on.
Why don't we talk about it?
Well, I think it's because it's just a one-note song. Because for me, when I see someone that has a Confederate flag paired with a Nazi flag that's dressed up in like a white pointy outfit, I kind of immediately stereotype them as very sad, pitiful creatures.
Is that
They may
different
not
than
be.
red MAGA hat?
Well, no, it's
Not
to me
much.
they belong in a bucket of just
Maybe a basket
for some
of deplorables?
or
Okay,
they
Hillary.
belong in a group that to me is very sad, which is I value things that are immutable or are non-alterable things more than anything else. So say what you like about groups like religion that try to value chastity or being pure or something like that, but at least they have some principles that you could modify one to try to attain that goal.
Also, those are non-violent.
Most. In the case of the people wearing MAGA hats, but also having this purity flag or something like that for racialness, I look at that like, okay, well, this is your identity, is that's what you're proud of. You're not really proud of anything that you yourself have agency over, your actions. I'm proud of the fact that I served. It's like, okay, that makes sense because you had to put energy and effort to do so and face risks even if the rewards are not very high. It makes sense that you would be proud of this because it's an action that you took upon yourself to principles that you find endearing. But, I'm proud because I'm Asian. It's like, well, what the hell do you have to be proud about that for? Like, you were just born into that. You didn't do anything. You're just taking credit for none of it makes sense. And so for people who really claw onto that, it makes me sad because they have really nothing else to show for their existence.
Well, do you feel the same way about gay pride or Black Lives Matter? Is that...
They're an oppressed minority that historically the laws of our land have not treated them the same.
That's very true. They're still in that category of what Phil was saying, not something they had to do anything.
But they do, because it is dangerous.
To be seen as equal.
Yeah, that's why so many shows that are set in like the 60s often have a closeted gay character, because it was literally dangerous for them to be open.
Yeah, even the movie Clue, which I love, like the
great.
guy loses his NSA employment because he was outed as a homosexual in one of the endings.
Mm-hmm.
That's enough to kill not only your career, but pretty much your entire reputation.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like when it comes to effort and energy to be able to go to these kind of express the fact that you're proud of being gay or that Black Lives Matter, this is essentially going against diffusion. The easier path is just to keep your head down, don't call attention to yourself, work in the system, and just be a good little robot. And this is kind of what, unfortunately, I think Taoism does, which is, the best way out of slavery is just to be the best slave. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't quite work, right? Like, you can't just go with the flow just because you can go with the flow. And yeah, you can get some perks out of it, but eventually you're going to have to realize that in order to change a system, despite how insane the odds would be against you, that takes a lot of courage and action and energy and risk, even if the reward is very low. But if enough people do it, then it can turn the tide. And I feel like, okay, that is something to be proud of.
So with that, if you're standing up and taking a stance against the system, is that survival of the most adaptable?
No. Thank you, Micah, for bringing back the original point, though. Survival of the most adaptable, I would think, is really managing how you can use your
That'd be keeping your head
environment.
down.
And keeping your head down, how to use your environment to your best case. When Apollo slingshotted the moon, they're using their environment and inertia of other bodies for them to succeed. Not a group of people, not a whole cause or a principle or a value that we would hold higher than above all others, which is equality. Nope, just one guy taking advantage of whatever that person can in the environment that they exist, and that could be just keeping your head down. That could also be staging a propaganda movement. But nonetheless, it's just for one thing. I need to survive. I feel like survival of the fittest would definitely not be about drawing attention to yourself, because that's kind of a self-sacrificing move. And that's typically not seen as a good thing to survive. Like, you're going to start losing talent points here.
This is what, cult number 7 at this point?
Cult number 7. Yeah, maybe.
And so when I think about survival of the fittest, I think of someone that's like Arnold Schwarzenegger in his 80s, right? Someone who's very, very strong and athletic. And when people are like, yep, that's the person, like an alpha confident person that is going to outshine amongst all the other plebes around them. And that's the person who's going to survive. And I'm like, no.
What about Jimmy Carter at 94, still building homes for Habitat for Humanity? Is he the fittest?
He is the fittest in the fact that he's still alive.
He's going to outlive all the presidents. It's going to be great. He's going to be like 120 going to Obama's funeral.
Yeah, he's the exception that proves the rule that you have to be kind of this terrible human being to live longer. Like some demonic soul.
How is he a terrible human being? He sold his peanut farm to avoid conflicts of interest to be president. A peanut farm.
Exception to the rule. Like, I used to think that, and I hate to say it, but I don't wish death upon anybody, but I would read obituaries with great pleasure. Certain obituaries. I feel like, for me, it's like, why did the people that live the longest also happen to be the most terrible people? For some reason, Jimmy Carter's still alive, so that's good.
What has he done that we don't know about? That's the real question.
Pizzagate. But it's actually Peanutgate.
I got it.
Peanutgate. I think he was very ineffectual during the energy crisis during his time.
Oh yeah, he was a bad president. He was a good moral president, but he was a bad executive president. He did not work with Congress at all, and that is why the Republicans turned their back, and some Democrats. And that's why Reagan was so good, because Reagan would just eat his jelly beans in his Alzheimer-ridden mind and read a script for what someone else wrote for him.
It is weird, though, that you could be totally not aware of your surroundings and have lost all mental faculty, but still be an American president.
That explains
Isn't that amazing?
5 of our last
It
6
is kind of
presidents.
amazing. I feel like that's a double standard, though. It only applies for Republicans for some reason. If Obama wore a tan suit, or if he had Dijon mustard for his
God forbid
hot dog or burger, this would be on the front page. Like, this is a terrible leader. How dare he? He's so out of touch with the common folk. But for some reason, we just buy it. But like, when it comes to the other side, like, it's totally okay for them to have Swiss cheese for a brain.
Conservatives buy it because saying that Obama is so bougie because he wore a tan suit is just subtle racism. It doesn't matter what he did. They would just make a claim and say it was bad because he was a Democrat and because he was black.
To be fair, Democrats also give Republicans a hard time about their appearance as well, which I think is just a fucking waste of time, and I wish people would stop doing that.
But it's for actual things, like Mitch McConnell having blue lips and blue hands because his heart is barely working.
I was going to say more like things like Trump's really excessively long tie and how people think that was hilarious, and also just the height of unfashion. And I'm just like, who cares?
It was an odd affectation, though.
Yeah, but who cares? It's about as odd as a fucking tan suit. Big deal.
I agree with that because there's so many things that he does that are terrible.
Yeah, there's so many other things he does. There are so many other things we can like point at that are actually terrible. Who cares what someone wears?
The more you make him a caricature, the easier it is to not actually criticize him.
You think that's
and that's a failure of our media state.
But you think that's not what they were doing to Obama?
Yeah.
Like, it's exactly the same thing.
Well, that's actually a good counterpoint, though, that when they complain about Obama's use of Dijon mustard, it makes me kind of feel like, well, you guys are complaining about the wrong thing. You should be complaining about his questionable legal use of extrajudicial drone killing.
No, it wasn't.
These are things that we should talk about.
It was a war crime.
Right,
that's all it was. There's nothing questionable about it.
At best, questionable. At face value,
so
like,
who gives a shit about someone liking Dijon mustard?
Trump has had more drone strikes than Obama had in his 8 years.
Not a surprise. He's also taken more time off to golf and all other sorts of... See, that I care about.
Yeah, but you know what it is?
It's important.
It's really gross to see an empire die, and that is what we are seeing.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
That's all it is, because
sucks.
most of the presidents have kept the status quo. We've had war criminals for the last 50 years as president, because they've all done something.
Or was it Truman first?
No, actually, it was Truman, but that was actually in war, so it was a literal war crime, but it did stop millions dying, kind of. It was a shock and awe, and it worked. But then we had Eisenhower, who was like, I'm never going to use a fucking nuke, but I'm going to build a highway system, so we have airstrips every 20 miles or so, because that might be important, because we're a big country. And then from then on, it was basically all war criminals.
Right. No, I feel like we unwittingly get into these traps where we're not going to criticize our presidents for real things because we're defending or criticizing them on silly things, long ties or small hands or
if we actually hold
suits.
one up. If we actually hold the presidency to the candle, an ex-president, it will go up in flames. And then we will do it to the next ex-president. And we will hold it to a candle and it will go up in flames. Because they are all doing the same thing. If we criticize one for tangible, actual failures in their candidacy, we will then find all of the actual failures in all the other candidacy and realize that our system is so fucked up and broken that there's very little we can do about it.
Yeah, I'm living in cognitive dissonance now because I'm not really sure how my brain can comprehend how 70 million people voted for the Republican Party, particularly Trump, and more people voted for him this time around than last 4 years ago. So if you talked about mandatory voting as a way to like express the will of the people, well, there you get it right there. And so the only conclusion I can come up with is a sobering one where we're really witnessing the end of the Pax Americana, of the American regime or the American empire. And it's a very sad thing because we're here with front row tickets to kind of see, well, the next next 5 steps are very clear. First, you're going to have considerable decrease in the quality of life and the life expectancy of your average citizen.
2020.
You're going to see
already there.
You're going to see large swaths of unemployed or underemployed people.
The last 15 years and 2021.
Yep.
You're going to see basically world records of disparity between wealth of those who have and who have not.
America since the 1980s.
But more so than the Gilded Age. I think that the next 2 would be something like civil unrest, of course, which just goes without saying.
2020.
And then the last one is just
it will be civil.
Slowing down, essentially the ascension of another regional power that becomes a superpower. And that's most likely not going to be one of our friendlies. And we're kind of like step 3 out of step 5, you can kind of see that, and it's very depressing because it didn't have to be this way. And I just wanted to say, well, it really isn't the survival of the fittest. It's not the survival of the fittest in the sense of who has the most carriers or nukes or jet engines or
sometimes you just get
Space
lucky.
Force. The survival of the most adaptable or those who can make sure that we can fit into modern times the quickest. And unfortunately, there is 1 or 2 countries out there that can override the will of the people because it's a tyranny of the majority and simply adapt to the times as quickly and as ruthlessly as possible. And we're not that country.
We definitely are not that country. At least not right now, not with the people who are in power being old and set in their ways. We're going to fall behind.
To me, the adage is the survival of the most powerful. And that's what I think about fittest. And that's not true. It's survival of the most adaptable. Those that can take the inertia of the times that we live in and to manipulate it for their own best cause at the most likely detriment of others. Hint, hint, not us.
Yeah, not us. But why does it have to be at the detriment? Why can't we just all work for a common good?
Hey, no, that's Marxism. That's Marxism socialism.
Yeah, that's...
All right.
Hey, look, I didn't vote for a socialist commie.
Like, why do we have to step on other people? Why do we have to step on other people to get to the top? Can't we just...
What species are you?
Listen.
See, as a lizard person, they don't understand that cooperation is only semi-voluntary for humans.
But there's a reason why might makes right has been an adage for 8 millennia.
But it doesn't.
And is still kind of true today.
I mean,
if I have a bigger stick, you will probably listen to me more.
Yeah,
that's all
that's
it ever
true,
is.
Until I find a bigger stick, and then we'll see.
And then might makes right.
Or
so it is survival of the actual physical fittest.
Or
whoever has the biggest stick speaks the loudest.
No. Sometimes it's the cleverest.
No.
Because they'll be like, hey, you can't use
Yep.
that stick on me, or Sky Cake won't be yours.
Yeah, but we're already past that. I'm just waiting for violent
okay.
atheism to take over the world. God, I can't wait for violent atheism to take over the world.
No, that'll never happen.
You can't hit me. You won't get Sky Cake. I don't believe in Sky Cake.
I make my own cake.
Blasphemous.
No. No, I don't.
I should have never gave you the Jehovah's Witness pamphlet. Sorry.
Damn right you shouldn't have.
The day of your birth doesn't matter, only the day of Christ's birth. I don't believe in Christ. Big stick.
Okay.
All right, anyway.
That went into the weird part. I don't even know.
Well, to my very religious mom, thank you for listening, and we hope that militant atheism doesn't take over the world.
I doubt it. Atheists are the least violent people I know. Mostly because they're just apathetic about
Wait
causes.
till push comes to shove. Plenty of violent atheists will be like, "Oh, you think you're going to heaven? Okay."
That sounded very Midwestern.
Oh yeah. Don't worry. It's why
Okay.
I have the Browning automatic rifle in my closet, just to make sure people can see their God.
Yeah, you betcha.
You betcha.
Alrighty. Hopefully you don't go to hell.
Keep her moving.
Oh God. Okay.
I
That's it.
condone
I'm
all
done.
violence
I'm
towards
done.
any other humans. Just to make that clear, I'm a very pro peace guy.
But if we did condone violence, it has to be with a thick Minnesota accent.
God, yeah.
Super
That's just
thick.
hands down.
All right, look down there. That's from Kentucky. All right, don't shoot till you see the whites of their eyes. You betcha. Okay.
Or the whites of their tails.
And remember, just like our good President Biden said, aim for the leg, not for the chest.
Or the face. Okay.
God,
What even
that
happened?
It doesn't matter. Thanks, Mom.
Thanks, Mom. Bye.
Thanks, Mom.